He's been long seen as the West's favourite leader in Africa, championed by presidents and prime ministers as a symbol of strong, visionary leadership. But Rwanda's Paul Kagame, whose troops ended the genocide in 1994, has serious critics who accuse him of authoritarianism at home and supporting rebels abroad. Now, following a series of damning UN reports, Western donors are taking fright, withdrawing aid and saying Kagame could be guilty of war crimes. But is there more to this story than meets the eye? That's what we'll be asking this week on Africa Today.
Rwanda's Western allies, including the US and Britain, have severed ties with Paul Kagame's government over a UN report linking his government with the violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Kagame is accused of providing fighters and military assistance to rebels in the DRC. Now his friends, who once argued that his intervention in the DRC was defensible, have frozen him out. They have now cut aid to his government, with the US even warning that he could face criminal prosecution over his support for Tutsi rebels who deserted the Congolese army. The West's public support for him was motivated by guilt over failure to act in the 1994 genocide, which claimed the lives of 800,000 people. Meanwhile, human rights organizations have accused Kagame's government of being repressive and undemocratic at home, branding Western leaders' approach as selective and shameful. So what's really behind this U-turn? Did the UN's latest report uncover further evidence against Rwanda, or are the motives more sinister? This week, Africa Today also asks whether the Central African country is the victim of a Western conspiracy against the leadership of Paul Kagame.
Hello, I'm Henry Bonso and this is Africa Today. He's been called a visionary leader by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and one of the greatest leaders of our time by ex-US President Bill Clinton. Yes, ever since Paul Kagame and his troops ended the Rwandan genocide in 1994, Western leaders have been keen to shower praise and aid. But in their desire to support him, have they overlooked abuses at home and abroad? That's the charge from human rights groups, which are delighted that the US has finally accepted the latest UN report, claiming Rwanda has been supporting murderous rebels in eastern Congo. They've withheld an aid package and warned Kagame he could end up in The Hague like Charles Taylor. So why this change? Well, with me are Vava Tampa, the director of Save the Congo, broadcast journalist Vincent Gasana, and on the line from Lagos, Nigeria, Professor Oke Onyejekwe, managing director for the Center for Sustainable Governance. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
I want to start off with you, Vava. So we've got Britain, the US, the Netherlands, Germany suspending some aid. I mean, the US saying got deep concerns about Rwanda's support to the Congolese rebel group that goes by the name M23.
Yes.
What's your reaction to this? Are you absolutely delighted that at last somebody's taking notice of these reports? Or do you think, well, hang on a minute, I'm a bit cautious? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, the recent reactions by the US and Britain and Germany and the Netherlands are too little and too late. But nonetheless, they're encouraging signs. It shows us that the world is beginning to take notice of the killings and the raping that's been engulfing the Congo since 1998. And the world is beginning to realize that actually Kagame is not an angel. He is similar to Habyarimana.
Why do you say he's similar to the former president? Can you explain why you think that people have taken this latest UN report more seriously than the last one a couple of years ago that was ignored by Western leaders? Well,
the simple fact is the killings in Congo is becoming an embarrassment, a moral embarrassment to world leaders. We're talking about 5.4 million people killed since 1998. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason
it's one thing for there to be lots of killing, but the other thing is to say that Paul Kagame has been the directing mind behind this, as Charles Taylor was accused of being in Sierra Leone. This is the key thing, isn't it? Whether or not Paul Kagame, as president of Rwanda, who has been championed and lionized by Tony Blair and other world leaders, is now persona non grata because there is proof that he has been helping fomenting unrest and mass murder in eastern Congo. The question is the evidence real? Does it hold water?
Two things. One is, the wars in Congo, the killings and the raping in Congo has many mothers and many fathers. But Paul Kagame is one of the grandfathers, alongside Museveni, Joseph Kabila and the FDLR. That is a fact, a historical fact. The second point is, we have in the US, Obama. Obama has been a long supporter of the Congolese cause for a very long time. During his time as a Senate, the only law he passed in the US Congress is a law to end the conflict in Congo.
Yeah, 2006.
In 2006, indeed. Yep. And we know that since he became president, Kagame has tried to be received in the White House a couple of times, and it has been turned down every single time. So there is a leadership in Washington, and I'm hopeful that the next 5 years we could see some sort of changes on the ground.
Let's bring in Vincent Gasana, a broadcast journalist, into this. Rwanda says this is an orchestrated attempt to cast them as the villain here. They completely dismiss these allegations, and they say actually there is a conspiracy against us, and actually we're trying to sue for peace. We're not causing war. It's other people from outside who are causing these problems. What's your reaction to this move by a number of Western countries in favour of this UN report to say, actually, we believe it, we need to withdraw support from Paul Kagame, at least for now?
I mean, all this seems to me to be a red herring, actually. The UN reports are a red herring.
Why?
It's almost an avoidance of looking at the causes of the conflict. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the conjecture of some kind of conspiracy.
Yeah.
There may or there may not be. It is, I suppose, fair to say that if there is a world order, somebody has manufactured that world order, and therefore they want it continued in their own image. Yeah. So in that sense, and there is an element of imperialism and international law. So in that sense, one can say that. But I think that debatable. I think best to restrict oneself on the actual facts on the ground in Congo. I think it's a red herring, because for me, the essential problem within Congo conflict and the involvement of Rwanda is the FDLR. And these are the former people whom Vava speaks, who are Habyarimana's gang who participated in the genocide and executed the genocide, along with all of the remaining ministers and so on who are given.
And these are the people that President Paul Kagame is so concerned about. They're on his western flank, and he doesn't want him, he wants to make sure there is no way on God's earth they can ever come back across the border and do that again. Remove
the FDLR from Congo, which is actually what Rwanda is asked and demanded all along. And then there's actually very little involvement as far as Rwanda is concerned within Congo.
Surely you don't really believe that. No one would believe you. Listen, here's a simple fact. The wars in Congo began in 1998 with Kagame invasion of Congo, when he created RCD Goma. RCD Goma was rebranded CNDP in 2006. And CNDP, after a lot of war crimes, when they've lost the international credentials, they have rebranded themselves as M23. That's a simple fact. The second point, we have evidence, loads of evidence of CNDP, Kagame's troops, and so forth, collaborating with the FDLR to loot Congo's natural resources.
Let's Vincent
Those are simple facts.
Let Vincent respond to that.
The idea that we're getting, this is becoming somewhat surreal now.
Okay.
We get into a situation where now Kagame is supposed to be cooperating with the FDLR, which is actually, you will remember, the very people that the RPF staged the war to get rid of, the very people who committed the genocide. Now, apparently, the FDLR and Kagame are working hand in hand. Look, let's try and bring some sanity to all of this. In in the late 90s, when the RPF was...
This is the Rwandan Patriotic Front,
yes. The Rwandan Patriotic Front. You know. The French created a corridor for its former friends, the Habyarimana regime, the Interahamwe militias, to get into Congo. They went into Congo and immediately they set up what they considered to be an alternative government. Now, alongside that, juxtapose that with the fact that within Congo, there are ethnic Rwandans who are Congolese, have been there since the 17th century. Okay. Now, once these people went in there, they pretty much started to carry out a mini genocide once they were established in Congo against the Congolese of Rwandan origin. Yeah. Now, they set up what they called a self-defense army,
and these
which is Laurent
Nkunda, who was arrested.
So now we have Congolese of Rwandan origin fighting against the FDLR. Yeah.
Good
now,
God.
Within that,
okay. You know, before you come back, I know you're desperate to come back, but we do need to go to Nigeria, because waiting patiently on the line is a political analyst who can shed maybe a different light on this, Professor Oke Onyejekwe, Managing Director of the Center for Sustainable Governments. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. What do you say about this? Because, of course, two very different readings of recent history here, but this is one of the most important countries on the African continent, one of its most important and significant and allegedly visionary leaders. What do you think of this latest UN report and the Western reaction to it?
Thank you very much. I must say that I do not have any counter evidence to doubt the veracity of the UN report. And so I will not comment on that. But what I'm basically concerned about is that it is high time that we brought an end to this madness. You know, the implications for the sub-region, of course, is well known, and this is ongoing, and the implications also for the continent. So I think that what, in my mind, is needed at this point, it's a more comprehensive strategy to resolve this situation in the Great Lakes.
And what would that more comprehensive strategy involve, Professor? What would that strategy involve?
What I'm trying to say is basically that I do not think that these sanctions by themselves, you know, targeting it at President Kagame, it's the only approach, because there's more to it than that. There are multiple actors in that conflict who have a variety of interests, you know. So I'm surprised, you know, that it took this long for the West to get engaged, you know, and that's why perhaps some people are quite cynical that here is a president that has been extolled by a great many as one of the shining lights in the continent, you know, and at the same time, where were they all this while?
And where was the African Union in all this? Professor, what about the role of the African Union? Because it's one thing, you know, Washington and, you know, Paris and London getting involved as donors and former friends. What about Addis Ababa? What about the leaders of Africa themselves and their attitude towards this particular conflict?
Well, I think the efficacy of the AU in resolving this conflict is well known to everyone. And I do not think that the leadership is there. That is not where I, for one, will expect some credible or meaningful intervention, because there are various interests, competing interests, which prevents the AU from becoming the effective interlocutor in this conflict. But
okay. Professor, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on because we have Facebook messages, emails and texts that have come in. We'll come back to you in a moment or two, Professor. First of all, a Facebook message from Salam in the United States, who says, Paul Kagame has outlived his usefulness to the West and they are now preparing to get rid of him. We have an email from Don in the US, and Don says, African leaders do a lot of wrong, and when they are on the firing line, they blame the West. Africa can do without aid. It's time to get rid of the begging bowl. And finally, a text from Emma in Nigeria. Emma says, I'm surprised, in reference to last week's debate, that black South Africans are complaining about economic empowerment. The blacks in South Africa are lazy. They sit idly, full of xenophobia against other African migrants in their country. Keep your thoughts flowing to us. Email africa@presstv.co.uk and text to +44 7800 008086. And Facebook fan page Africa Today, Press TV London. Back to the studio, Vincent Gasana, broadcast journalist, with us here. What about that Facebook message from Salam in the United States? Salam said, Paul Kagame has outlived his usefulness to the West. What do you make of that? Because he was welcomed, or maybe not necessarily in the White House, but certainly in Washington and in London.
I don't know whether, you know, he's been trying to get into the White House, as Vava claims, and hasn't been allowed in. What I do know is Paul Kagame was never there to serve the Western interest. He was always there to serve Rwandan interests.
Yeah. But they liked him. They liked him.
He was there to serve Rwandan interests. Yeah. And they liked him. And by the way, I think that maybe your package was slightly over-egging the issue. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been a severing of relationships. You know. There's been, and none of this is actually new. You know. Mm-hmm. If you go back a little bit, there was prior, I can't remember when this was, about a year ago now, yeah. When Laurent Nkunda was still in Congo.
Yes. And he's a former warlord who's now been arrested.
I think it's very, very important to try and keep these things factually correct. He is, again, the one of the Rwandan, ethnic Rwanda Congolese that I was talking about.
Yes. Alongside a guy...
he found the CNDD.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, they got to a stage where they were threatening Goma. Now, everybody got up in arms about this, and at the time, a great deal of pressure was put on Rwanda to try and do something about this. And there was a brief agreement between the Rwandan and the Congolese governments to have a joint force to go in and deal with it, which they did for a couple of weeks, resulting in the arrest of Laurent Nkunda.
Yeah.
Now, what transpired after that is that the remaining forces of Laurent Nkunda had an agreement with the Congolese government where they would be incorporated into the Congolese army.
But that agreement fell apart, didn't it?
Hang on. There's nothing...
Finish your point.
Let me just finish the point. Let me just
finish your point very briefly.
Is there anything factually incorrect in what I've just said?
Absolutely.
Like?
Absolutely. I tell you what, this is what happened. Laurent Nkunda became a loose cannon.
Yes.
The US, at the time Obama was being sworn in, and the US made it very clear. Either Kagame takes Laurent Nkunda out of the equations, or Kagame would face sanctions.
Right.
And Kagame was forced to take Laurent Nkunda out of the equations, and he was given a long extended holiday in Kigali. Now,
are we seeing the same? Are we seeing the same? Are we seeing history repeat itself with another warlord called Bosco Ntaganda?
Bosco Ntaganda.
People call him the Terminator. They say he's responsible for all kinds of rapes and killings in Eastern Congo.
There's nothing new about him.
Laurent Nkunda could have been born in Congo. He might be Congolese.
He is Congolese.
Well, the reason I say that is all of us, I mean, the fact that the Congolese state has collapsed, it's difficult to tell who's Congolese and who's not.
Well, should we question your right to be Congolese then?
Can I finish? Now, the simple fact is this: when Laurent Nkunda was taken after the equations, and Kabila is also partially responsible for this.
The current president of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Indeed.
Let's explain.
Rather than sort of the CNDP being integrated as he claims, it has never been integrated. What happens in Congo is this: you have the Congolese state doesn't have an army. What we have is a collection of different militia gangs who have signed different deals with the government, but these militia gangs have retained their sort of parallel command structure. So the CNDP has never became part of the Congolese army. They simply decided for now, for the next few months or few years, we will not fight the Congolese army. We would train, rearm ourselves to prepare ourselves for the next skill. And that's essentially what happened.
Okay, Vincent,
let me just explain this. Look.
Remember, this is very, very detailed stuff.
It's very detailed stuff.
But remember, we've got an audience listening, watching all over Africa. They have to understand what you're saying.
Now, Vava himself said that M23 was nothing more than...
This is the organisation that is now led by a guy called Bosco Ntaganda, who the UN has indicted on war crimes.
They call themselves M23 because the agreement they made with the Congolese government was March the 23rd. And then they claim that that agreement has been... The Congolese government has reneged on that agreement, which is why they have come out of the army to rebel. Now, they cannot come out of the army if they had never been in the army. Now,
the fundamental point, though, and we've got to constantly go back to this, is the reason why Paul Kagame is at the moment, and you say it's not a major and serious thing at the moment, but of course we know that...
I don't say it isn't serious.
Oh, okay, but the United States, says it's withdrawing $200,000 in military assistance. Britain, Rwanda's largest single bilateral donor, now says it's going to delay payment of the latest batch of £60 million in aid. This is serious, and it has implications for what Paul Kagame wants to do in transforming his country, its infrastructure and other things. People are taking this seriously.
Look, let me just say, at the centre of all of this are people in Congo. I don't think that, for me, Congo has ever had any kind of peace in our lifetime. And I think an indication of this, if you say, is that one would say that the time that they had any kind of peace was during Mobutu. I mean, that's just like saying, the time you had any kind of daylight is during a bit of moonlight. So since then, it's obviously much worse now than it has ever been. And you're getting where the statistics of the dead and the rapes and so on.
We're talking all of this, millions of people.
So so this is the center of all of this. Now I keep repeating. Rwanda has said that we're only interested in getting rid of the FDLR.
Yeah.
Now, let's assume that nobody believes that. Call their bluff. Why is the UN, all the Western powers, instead of putting pressure on Rwanda about every other rebel group in Congo, why don't they focus on the FDLR?
No, I really have to go back.
Then see what happens.
Okay. Let's see whether or not that is a practical solution, right? Let's talk to Professor Onyejekwe, who's in Nigeria. Is that possible then, instead of putting pressure on the Rwandans for every single militia group, allow the Rwandans actually to take a lead in this properly, instead of constantly putting pressure on them for every single rebel, warlord, terminator or otherwise? And also, what about President Kagame's reaction? What should he do now, given that this has happened?
Well, I think fundamentally the challenge there is much more than just what you can ask one president, Kagame, to show that. It is the problem is broader than just the issue of Rwanda alone, and that is why your first question to me regarding the role of the AU in particular was a pertinent one. But because I think that it takes more than just putting the pressure on Kagame to address this intractable solution. There are other heads of state, even within the sub-region, that I believe need to be involved. And I do not see these sanctions, in my judgment, as really that effective, no matter how dependent one can say that Rwanda is on these external partners. There's a lot of inconsistency on their part also. And that is why some people are cynical about this recent decision to court aid. It's a lot broader than just one president.
Are you suspicious? Do you think there's some kind of conspiracy? Some people say, well, here's an African leader who's independent, who's been taken down by the West.
No, I'm not really one given to these conspiracy theories, but there are too many coincidences. And this is not to say that Rwanda is totally, blameless. But I'm also cynical sometimes, and forgive me for that. When all of a sudden there's a change in postures, and which many people do not believe will be sustained. I'm simply saying that there has to be more concerted effort than just these sanctions, which in the end, in my judgment, will not address the fundamental problems that really underpin this intractable challenge in the Great Lakes.
Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. We've got 15 seconds left. Vava, what should happen next?
Well, it's quite simple, and our views on these issues are pretty clear. Now, peace begins with justice. Okay. And in case of Congo and the Great Lakes region, that justice must begin with Paul Kagame facing justice, answering about war crimes committed in Congo, right. Museveni answering about the killings in Bunia, as well as others.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And that's it for today. Thanks to all those of you who've sent in comments to us. Email africa@presstv.co.uk or text us to +44 7800 008086. Message will be charged at your local operator rates. Many thanks to our guests. They were Vava Tampa, the director of Save the Congo, Vincent Gasana, broadcast journalist, and on the line from Lagos, Professor Oke Onyejekwe, the managing director of the Centre for Sustainable Governance. We're back next week for another edition of Africa Today. Till then, it's goodbye from me. And on behalf of the whole team, thanks again for watching.